When looking for the king of podcasts, you're at the wrong channel.
Well, excuse me!
Looking for good ideas for life? You're far from good hands.
Hey, bud, what's your problem?
If you think the listener is always right, you're far from the right place.
Out of order! Even in the future, nothing works!
Hosted by a Northeasterner by birth, but a rebel by choice.
Are you threatening me?
If you want a host that floats between love and madness,
and we know the night is always gonna be here anyway. Thinking of you's working up my appetite, looking forward to a little afternoon delight.
then play on and listen to Crazy Train Radio.
All right, guys, listen to the blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
Within the gaming world, there are your general gamers, but then there are those that enjoy the dark underbelly of gaming. If you're one of those that enjoy the dark underbelly of gaming, we certainly got the place to send you. Scorpion Lair Games. That's right, Scorpion Lair Games is the creators of the true crime hit Killers, the card game. Let's not forget they also have Killers Clothing Company, the profiler game, and things like the 5-Minute Murder channel on YouTube. And we certainly can't forget the new book that is certainly a hit, Beyond the Headliners, True Crimes, Myths, and Legends. Make sure you visit Jeff and the Scorpion Lair Games on Facebook and everywhere today.
I'm Ken Davidoff, co-author of 101 Lessons from the Dugout, and you are listening to Crazy Train Radio.
Hey folks, it's your least favorite host in the podcast world, Croc, Jonathan Steele. And boy, do we have a good one for you today.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this next guest has covered baseball for over 30 years, and he is involved with this newer book that I actually got in the mail, thanks to our guest, 101 Lessons from the Dugout. He also was the president of the BBWAA from October of 2010 to October 2011. He also served as a baseball columnist at the New York Post from 2012 to 2022. And prior to his time at the Post, he wrote about baseball at Newsday and the Record of North Jersey. He's been on ESPN, MLB Network, yes, CNN, and others. And may have taught a little bit about the career he has taken up in Massachusetts. So let's go ahead and say hello to Ken Davidoff.
On the
the St. Louis team, we have who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
That's what I want to find out. I want you to tell me the names of the fellas on the St. Louis team.
I'm telling you, who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
You know the fellas' names?
Yes.
Well, then who's playing first?
Yes.
I mean the fellow's name on first base.
Who?
So, Ken, how are you, sir? Thank you for taking the time to chat.
I'm good, John. I'm good, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Right on. So, there's a lot to do with life in this book. And it's funny how or it's ironic, I should say, is how you show life lessons in this book through the game of baseball. So where did the idea come from, and how do you decide what lessons to include in putting everything together?
Well, Jonathan, I co-wrote this with a gentleman named Harley Rothbart, who is a retired pediatrician and longtime parenting expert. And I have to give him credit for the actual idea of connecting the lessons you learn on the field in baseball and softball to the rest of your life. You know, Harley loves these games, and he worked with young people for his entire professional life. And he was able to use baseball and softball as a teaching tool to his young patients. And then he, of course, knew the game at the grassroots level, and I knew it at the elite level. So we kind of joined forces and integrated our perspectives for this book.
So when Harley comes to you with the idea, was it, oh my God, that's genius. How did I not think of that? Or was it made sense right away when he said, hey, I got this idea?
Well, basically, Harley and I have the same literary agent named Lisa Leshny, and she paired us up. The initial thinking was, hey, maybe Ken can help you, get a big name to write the foreword. But the more Harley and I talked, Harley said, no, Ken, I want you to be my co-author. And Harley sent me the first draft of the manuscript, and I loved it. It was just so, I didn't say, why didn't I think of this? Because it's not really the kind of writing I was doing. I was during my career, I was analyzing trades and writing about injuries and labor talks and steroid tests and stuff like that. I wasn't writing about the game through this prism. But when he sent this to me, just as I was ready to end my career, it was just perfect for what I was looking for.
And it's interesting that you worked with Harley on this book and concept and all, because I'd be curious to know, like you said, you covered things at an elite level where he was more the grassroots side of things. And I guess in the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years that I can think of off the top of my head, it seems like with like Little League and stuff like that, the younger levels, parents seem to take the game too serious. So how would you describe the lessons that could be learned from this book, with both from the kid side, but also the parent side? Do they tend to seem to learn the same lessons, or is it two different views?
No, it's definitely the same view, Jonathan. And in the introduction to our book, we urge young readers and their parents and grandparents and coaches to read this book together, and talk about their takeaways. And I think the greatest takeaway we hope that readers have is that, there's more to playing this game than just winning. Of course, competitiveness is fun, and it's fun to win, and it's less fun to lose, but there are more than one way to win. Even if you lose the game, just by the knowledge you gain, the friends you make, it really, and especially at the youth level, there is so much more to take away from these games than just the final score.
And perfect example of that is something I know you discussed on other outlets and things like that, is the famous game from the Mets and the Yankees, where there was an error, all that stuff, and maybe you can tell the story. And you guys were going to approach him the next day to see how he was doing and such. And PR was like, no. And he's like, no, it's cool. We're good, and chat it with you guys. So could you talk about a little bit the story I'm bringing up here?
Yes, you were bringing up a story that I refer to when I'm talking about chapter 57, Errors, Grow from Your Mistakes, stay in the moment. And when talking about errors, the experience that comes to mind is indeed a Yankees-Mets game from 2009. The second baseman, Luis Castillo, who dropped a pop fly by Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod, that should have ended the game with a Mets win, but because he dropped it, it ended the game with a Yankees win. And it was just a devastating loss for the Mets at Yankee Stadium. And then the next day, day game after a night game, many of the reporters were waiting for Luis Castillo to come in. I know I was. I just wanted to see what he looked like after that, just that catastrophic error. And sure enough, he came in with a smile. And as you said correctly, the Mets public relations people tried to protect Luis, understandably, but Luis said, no, 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 I'll take questions. And, I think the questions were very human and sympathetic. Like, did you sleep? Did a lot of people reach out to you? Things like that. And he answered the questions and he went out and he had a great game and he helped the Mets beat the Yankees. So that was, to me, was the perfect example of how to shake off an error.
Absolutely. And there's definitely deeper meaning with that. And I know I'm going inside baseball as I say that tongue in cheek here. Was that Jay still running the PR department for the Mets?
Yeah, Jay Horwitz.
Yeah, who's got a great book himself.
He does.
People get a chance.
Mr.
If
Met.
you get a chance, yes. If folks get to check that out, please check it out because he's got stories upon stories to tell, and I like Jay and always had good communication with Jay. Very nice guy. But another thing that stood out lesson wise for me, and maybe you could see it bigger picture as well, is looking at things from the on deck circle to see how, whether it's your teammates or everything else, looking at a situation within the game you talk about, but there's also, you can look at that as, say, a younger sibling looking at how your parents handle things with the older sibling, and just different little things like that. What section was that in again? I'm sorry.
It's quite all right. That's in the first set. There are 6 sections, Jonathan. Section 1, part 1 is in the dugout, and it's chapter 8, on deck, prepare in advance, learn from those ahead of you. And yeah, you nailed it. And I want to make clear to your listeners, each of these chapters is a page or two. These are small bites, these chapters. So chapter 8 is the idea that just like when you're standing on deck, and you should use that time wisely, and you should look at the hitter in front of you and look at the pitcher to see what the pitcher is throwing. You're in the on deck circle many times in life. If you do have an older sibling and an older cousin, and you can see how they take on certain challenges, you can learn from the way that they did it.
And you mentioned a few minutes ago about having a name per se be a part of things. And you lucked out and you guys had David Wright, the Mets legend, do your forward. So was it you that approached David? Like, did you have a good relationship with him from years reporting? How did David get involved in this process?
Yeah, I don't think we lucked out. I think I had a good relationship with David, and he, and he trusted me. And I was very appreciative of his generosity. And we thought David was the perfect person to write this forward because we know David is a dad of 3 young kids and coaches his kids. And then the more I talked about it with David, the more I realized like he was really aligned with what we were doing here. He uses baseball and softball, and he also coaches soccer as a teaching tool the same way.
Absolutely. Well, obviously we want folks to get the book, but I got a couple baseball related questions for you because obviously the news is out there that there might be a potential strike next year.
Lockout.
Lockout, excuse me. But with that being said, what do you think are some of the biggest issues with the game to lead to where we're at currently?
Well, look, Jonathan, I do think the payroll disparity is an issue for sure. Now, whether salary cap is the best way to resolve that is debatable, But I think it's a problem that the LA Dodgers have this payroll. I think it's technically in the 400 million. Maybe if it's in the 300, then when you add the luxury tax, it gets to the 400s. And then you have the Miami Marlins, who are around 100, I believe. So I do think that's problematic. Now, you could argue who's more at fault for that, the Dodgers, the Marlins, and that's another thing we can discuss. But that disparity is not good. Beyond that, I think what baseball continues to try to solve is the dominance of pitching that has taken over for about 10 years now. And I do think that's because of all the technological advances. And they want more scoring, more action. I think the pitch clock helped at least improve the pace. But I still think they're looking for ways to have the ball and play more, and they haven't quite solved that yet.
As far as the payroll issue that you just brought up with certain teams, and obviously the Yankees had that issue for years and years when Steinbrenner was in charge and with us. But how do you think that will work with some of these contracts? Because, like, I'll use Otani for an example with the Dodgers, where he did the Bobby Bonilla thing with having a certain percentage.
Deferrals.
Yeah. So would that be the biggest issue with guys saying, "Hey, let me defer some of these payments to later on"? How does that work? And do you think, I guess, those guys who have stuff like that or bigger contracts, if we get a salary cap, would be grandfathered in? How do you see that working out as far as when trying to figure that kind of thing out?
Yeah, the big contracts would absolutely be grandfathered in. I mean, no one's losing guaranteed money. And I don't think deferrals are definitely an issue, and particularly with the Dodgers. And I do expect the deferrals to go away. I don't think either side is going to die on the hill of preserving deferrals. But I think the biggest problem is just, it's not the deferrals per se. It's just it's a handful of gigantic contracts that have been given out to Otani, to Juan Soto. And I don't, by problem, I mean biggest concern expressed by the owners.
Yeah. Well, what do you think on the player side would be some of the biggest concerns?
Well, I think the players in this round of bargaining are largely playing defense, Jonathan. Like, I think they actually did okay in the last bargaining agreement. They got some gains, not huge gains, but some meaningful gains. And now it's because of the way things have evolved over this bargain agreement, particularly with Otani signing with the Dodgers, that heavily deferred deal, and the Dodgers capitalizing on that to just grow and grow and grow and win 2 straight World Series and be favored to win a third. It's the owners who are looking to affect massive change, and it's the players kind of saying like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" Like, we're okay with the status quo. So that's the players have made some offers that concern teams that don't spend enough, a la the Marlins, concerning they'll get some more money spent in the draft, I believe. But the reality of this round of bargaining is the narrative is being driven correctly, I think, by the owners' asks.
Do you think they will prevent the lockout and we'll have
God,
baseball
no.
next year?
No, well, the lockout's going to start December 1st, and I'd say there's about a 0.1% chance of there not being a lockout on December 1st. And then the key question that you followed up with is, will we lose games? Unfortunately, right now I'm betting on games being lost. That would be the first time since the 94 to 95 labor dispute, and I think that would be very, very damaging. But I do think that's where we're headed at this juncture.
Who currently are you enjoying sitting down and watching? When you get to sit down and watch baseball, is it the New York guys because that's where you covered and you're from that neck of the woods? Is there somebody else on the West Coast who you enjoy watching play the game currently?
Gosh, I don't watch that many baseball games, Jonathan. That's the truth. I mean, I not that many Major League Baseball games. I pay rapt attention. I'm well aware of what happened last night and every night. Every morning I read MLB.com and I watch highlights on MLB.com. So I guess that counts for something. But it's rare nowadays that I actually sit down in real time and watch a ball game.
As a writer, and you are now retired, at least from full-time writing,
Hmm.
but what was the toughest story you had to write?
Hmm. A really good question. I think the toughest stories I would not, maybe not a specific story, but like when I had to be critical of someone who I liked personally, and that would happen quite often. And the way I had to deal with that was, not make it personal, just criticize the person professionally and keep it above the belt. And if I could kind of give that person a heads up, like, hey, this is coming, I'm going to have to be critical of you here. I mean, the one that stands out most is Joe Torre, who I'm still very fond of personally, and I thought he did a great job with the Yankees. But at the end of his 12-year run with the Yankees, I did think it was time to move on from him, which of course the Yankees did. And that was a tough column to write.
Yeah, and there's one story local to me that's, Christ, probably 42 years old, 43 years old at this point, but it's become lore in terms of, but people get it because of his personality and stuff, and everybody, they laughed about it until his death, at least. And that being, there was a Jason Stark and Dallas Green story at the old vet. And it was around the time of the 81 strike. They were either coming out of it or getting ready to go into it. I can't remember at this moment. But you know how it is for the writers and everything. They would go into the manager's office, try to get some quotes and all that stuff, after a game. And Jason asked something. And he wasn't being a smartass. He asked and Dallas was just so furious with how things were going and blew up at Jason. And it became Dallas ended up putting the story in his book, and it was quite entertaining. But next day or a couple days later, it's like, Stark, get in here. Yeah. Hey, I want to apologize, all that fun stuff. So did you have any kind of blow ups like that? Like you said, there's times you would let folks know, hey, this is coming down the pike if you're able to. Did you have any famous blow ups with folks?
I had blow-ups. I'm not sure how famous they were. But yeah, I had some disagreements with some players and some managers and some general managers and owners and executives. And sometimes we worked it out, sometimes we didn't.
But I think with the way you mentioned and how you would handle it and telling people that, hey, something might be coming down the pike, if you could, if it was doable.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes you a man of character, and that you try to, hey, I'm right. I'm keeping it professional. I'm keeping it above the belt, like you said. But I think you would, with that presentation of yourself, you might have been able to work it out with a lot of those folks, like you said, whether it's players, managers, executives, whatever the case is. And sadly, in today's world, and I have the background not only in history but in journalism, what I went to school for, both subjects. And it's sad, I think, today, and maybe you can give me your opinion on this, because say with certain podcasts and different elements, because the media has changed, or some media, as I do finger quotes here, they don't have that code of ethics. So what do you think the biggest change in media and presentation and storytelling? Because obviously papers have been going downhill for years. And what's been the biggest change you would think within the world of media covering sports?
Sports specifically, Jonathan, I would say similar to what the things you were just saying, like, yeah, like the loss of nuance, the rise of the hot take, and the loss of accountability. And to make clear, I still think there are some people doing it the way I like to do it, what I consider to be the right way. But, now you have on TV or even just on social media, just people just spouting off, about people who they never have met and never will meet. And that to me just doesn't ring true. There's not the same authenticity to that level of commentary. Unfortunately, in my opinion, that level of commentary has often become more popular than the commentary that to me is more authentic when you are actually interacting with the people you are covering and criticizing.
And as well, I guess within that same point, it drives me bonkers and there's times I go live with things and all, but I rather sit back 15, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever. If you hear something coming through the pipeline, whether it's through ESPN or MLB Network or through social media or whatever the case is, I don't want to be the first guy to tell a story or, hey, this guy was traded or this happened or whatever the story might be. I'd rather sit back and go, all right, because doing this for 14 years, you make, and what you did for 30, you make contacts and everything. I rather, hold on, let me take a step back. Let me see if I can find out what actually happened before I go out, shoot my mouth off and getting information wrong. Am I off the grade with something like that?
A little bit, in my opinion. I mean, I think my job, Jonathan, was to break news when I could. I
Yeah.
couldn't have the mentality of I'll just wait for others to break that story. A big part of my expectations had to do with breaking news, and I broke my share of trades and free agent signings and other sorts of news. But yeah, for sure. I didn't want to get anything wrong, and
Yeah.
there were times when I wasn't quite sure I had a story nailed. And had I gone forward with it, I would have been okay. And I would have gotten flowers for getting it first. But for my own peace of mind, I didn't mind finishing second or third,
Yeah.
as opposed to risking being wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's the point I was trying to go with it. Hey, David Wright was traded to Anaheim Angels. No, he stayed his whole career in New York, but wait, I want to make sure do contacts. Hey, through the offices of their league and all. Hey, did this trade happen? Okay, then like you said, if I'm second or third, that's cool.
Right.
But
But I
yeah,
had
I
to be
want to be.
first sometimes.
Yeah, I get that. Well, what led you to getting into writing? Was it something as a kid, whether it's reading the newspaper or books, or what led you down the alley that you went down?
Yeah, it was definitely reading the newspaper as a young person. Age 7, I was a big Yankees fan. I grew up in New Jersey, late 70s. Couldn't be a Mets fan, they stunk. But I was a Yankees fan, and I would read the Yankees coverage in the Newark Star Ledger, a gentleman named Moss Klein. And I would read his stuff and say, oh, wow, he gets to go to the games every day and he gets to write about the Yankees. I think so. When I grow up, I want to be Moss Klein. So that's how I got to do that. That's how it got into my mind.
We obviously taped a Hall of Fame panel yesterday as of this taping. That will be a part of a fan experience of the Hall of Fame episode I'm going to do. But obviously, one of my guys, and I'm not a Phillies fan at heart, but I appreciate somebody like a Don Mattingly who should be in the Hall. But unfortunately, he had a back injury that shortened his career. But with what he did between the lines, absolutely deserves being in the Hall. Is there other guys like that? And people listen to the episode we taped yesterday, that portion of the episode. But is there other standouts for you that haven't made to the Hall yet? Because Mattingly's one, Jeff Kent got in this year, buddy committee, and who is a big standout for you in terms of not being in yet?
Well, I'm going to repeat what I said on our other conversation. I mean, the fact that Pete Rose, Barry Bonds, and Roger Clemens are not in the Hall of Fame to me is no bueno. You're talking about three of the most accomplished players in the history of the game. I understand why they're not in, but I disagree with that assessment. I think there are people in the Hall of Fame already who have damaged the game just as much as these three gentlemen. I think it's selective outrage. And I think, like we talked about yesterday, Jonathan, it is inevitable that extraterrestrial aliens are going to take over this planet at some point. And when they do, and they go through the Hall of Fame, they're like, how are the all-time hit leader, the all-time home run leader, and a seven-time Cy Young Award winner not in the Hall of Fame? How does that make sense? And I won't be around anymore. You probably won't either. No disrespect, but our descendants, they're gonna struggle to explain to the extraterrestrials why that's the case.
Well, final question for you. As a guy who's had a vote with the Writers Association and such, even though you're not working full time now, do you still have a vote? How does that work?
So how it works is once you stop covering the game full time, you get a 10-year grace period. So I am in the middle of that grace period. I have another 8 years to go in voting, and then I will lose my vote.
All right, folks, like I said at the beginning of this, 101 lessons from the dugout right here. So where can people find this? Where can they find you social media wise? Let's get the plugs in.
Thank you, Jonathan. The book is available on Amazon. It is available at the publishing website, which is Bloomsbury, Bloomsbury. It should be available in every bookstore around, and if it's not available, it's on their database, and you can order it. And then, as for me, I am obnoxiously all over social media, from Twitter X to LinkedIn to Facebook to Instagram to BlueSky to Threads. So I still don't understand TikTok, so I'm not on there.
Me neither.
Yeah, I've aged out, unfortunately, but I am everywhere else to be found.
Ken, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jonathan. Great talk.
You are going to need a bigger closet when you meet our new friends.
What?
Our friends over at Silk Screams out of Buffalo, New York is a diverse owned company that has a variety of shirts to fit your needs.
I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
Let's also not forget that Silk Screams also runs the semi-annual Buffalo Horror Garage Sale, which has tons of merchandise, celebrity guests, and tons of fun. Check our friends out over on their Big Cartel site to order stuff, or on social media for updates on merch, or on the Buffalo Horror Garage Sale. Visit our friends, like I said, at Silk Screams today.
Yeah, baby.
This is Jason Kendall, and you're listening to Crazy Train Radio.